from Galilee. A love story by Marjorie Holmes.
We pick up at the beginning of chapter 16 in this edited version of Marjorie Holmes' book, Two from Galilee. In the last reading, we found out that Mary had decided to accompany Joseph on his trip to Bethlehem. He was being required to go for the census. Mary chose to go with him, even though she knew the baby would be born at any time. Mary's mother was very upset. Her father was somewhat understanding. And as we pick up today, we find Mary and Joseph getting ready to leave and saying goodbye to Mary's parents. Let's read now the beginning of chapter 16 in this version of Two from Galilee. Joseph had let Mary sleep as long as possible, but now he must rouse her. "If we're to be off before daylight, we must get started, Mary." Joseph was making numerous trips for things to further load the donkey. He had strapped a tent across its back, forming a saddle on which Mary could ride. To its sides hung dried foods, cooking vessels, clothing. Now he added tools, for he had no idea how long they might be gone. He'd probably have to find work before they were ready to come home. They'd have to stop at the well to fill the water bags, and they'd better get there before the others began to arrive. It was growing lighter. They no longer needed the torch that burned outside the door. The outlines of the house grew clearer, and Joseph felt it too, its permanence and safety, but more the dearness of this place that he had worked on so hard and now must leave. He put an arm around Mary's shoulders. They stood gazing upon it. "Don't worry," he tried to cheer her. "It will still be here when we get back." He went to stamp out the torch. The sky was gray now, laced with pink. A cock crowed. Hannah and Joachim were coming up the path to see them off. Hannah's teeth were chattering with the cold of the morning. Her eyes were like burned cinders. Her voice had gone hoarse from pleading with Mary not to go. But her first burst of selfishness had ceased to goad her. Her only concern was now for her daughter. Fighting back her own tears, Mary kissed her mother's wet cheek. Then Joseph lifted her onto the donkey. Heavy as she was, he lifted her with ease. Hannah noticed, taking such consolation from it as she could. And for the first time she acknowledged what her husband had maintained. If any man could take care of Mary in her coming ordeal, that man was Joseph. "Goodbye," Mary's father said. "Be careful. If you can join up with a party along the route, you'd better do so. There are often robbers in the hills, you know. And wait." He trudged beside them a few steps. "Take this. You'll need it." He pressed a few coins into Joseph's hands. "You'll need it for the little one." "We'll be all right," Joseph said cheerfully. "Don't worry. God will be with us." Yes, God will be with you." He must let them go, and he stood, one hand upraised. "God be with you, and keep you, my children." They progressed down the street, the hooves of the donkey making a hollow music on the deserted cobbles. They were shadowy figures in the white mists of the morning. They were like something out of a dream, and Hannah stared after them, gnawing the fist that was pressed against her lips. "God help them," she whispered. "Oh, God help them." "He'll help them," Joachim said, "for he is leading them on this journey. He's taking them to Bethlehem, the city of David." "Bethlehem," Hannah said. "That's where I was born. What a pity that all my people are gone from there. They might have given them shelter." Her husband continued to gaze after the laden donkey that appeared and disappeared in the floating veils of fog. He began to quote from Micah, "But thou, O Bethlehem, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that which is to be ruler in Israel." His voice shook even as he felt his wife's hand trembling on his arm. "Therefore will he give them up unto the time that she which travaileth hath brought forth." Hannah's fingers gripped him. "Bethlehem, she who's in travail." And as the great knowledge awoke within her, began to beat and break within her, Hannah's face likewise broke, dissolved. My God, she cried, and lifted its anguish to heaven. "Why have you denied me this truth so long?" Wordlessly, Joachim drew her to him. "I knew. I must have known. But—" Hannah interrupted him. "After all my vanity and my pride, inside it's true." Far below the road emerged, and as Hannah stared, the fog lifted for an instant, and the parents could see them clearly, their daughter, so small upon the burdened beast, and the tall man who led it. "I must tell her. I must catch them and tell her before it's too late." She broke from him and began to run, frantically calling her daughter's name, but Joachim caught his wife and restrained her, wildly, though she wept. "Let me go. Let me go. This much comfort I can at least give Mary. I believe. Oh, Mary, I do believe." Chapter 17. As their goal loomed closer, they felt poor and ill-prepared and far from home, for suddenly from side roads and hillsides, other people had come streaming, leading or riding camels, on mules or donkeys, some on horseback, a number borne on litters carried by sweating slaves, but most of them on foot they came, all intent to get either to Jerusalem or to Bethlehem. The press was so great it was scarcely possible to see the temple in the distance, when at last they reached the outskirts of the holy city. But by then Mary was too miserable to care any more. "Hurry, Joseph, hurry," she begged, when he paused for the fourth time to give her a drink of water and wipe off her streaming face. Her cheeks were ashen, her lower lip was clenched. He could see that she was gripping the bundles piled beneath her until her knuckles were white. "Darling, I am hurrying. I'm doing the best I can." "Oh, I know, she said. "Forgive me. It's just, I don't know how much longer I can go on." "Then let's stop," he said. "Mary, if your pains are beginning, we can't go on. We must get help." "No, we've got to go. Go to Bethlehem." They were not too far now from the Bethlehem gates, where a mass of humanity surged, anxious to have their goods weighed and be done with the tax collectors stationed there. They could enter the town soon. A couple of Roman centurions on magnificent horses rode about, trying to keep order. "Don't crowd. Get in line now. Come on, get in line. Get your belongings ready." The donkey had halted. Mary sat dazed, limp from her last bout with the agony, trying to rest, to regain her identity before it assaulted her again. Dimly she was aware that Joseph had left her side for a moment. She could see that he was saying something to the centurion, and this astounded her, and yet it did not either. Nothing mattered, nothing except that she hang on to herself until they managed, heavens knows when, to get through the gates and into the inn. The inn. Oh, all she could think of was the inn, the bed there. Dear God, please let there be a bed at the inn. She saw the centurion suddenly wheel his horse about and wave his whip above the crowd. "Stand back! Out of the way! Let these people through! You fools, where are your manners?" Many fell back, surprised, as he pulled up beside her. "Are you all right, lady?" he asked, taking off his helmet and mopping his brow where the iron weight had left a deep red mark. He was very young. His anxious blue eyes did not match his harsh voice. He seemed embarrassed. "Yes," she gasped. "Yes, thank you. Once we get inside, to the inn, I'll be fine." Joseph reached the tax collector. With unsteady hands he brought forth the coins. 5 dinars. Out of the 12 they had brought for the trip, this was robbery. He flung the money onto the table and savagely stuffed the things back into the bags. But at least they'd cleared the gates and could find a place for Mary. He forced a smile as he strapped the bags back on. "It won't be long, my dearest. Be brave. I'll soon have a place where you can rest." She nodded, too grateful to speak. A place. She was so thankful. Again the donkey moved forward beneath her, through the gates into the hubbub of humanity just beyond. The inn stood to the left, a sprawling, moss-grown structure with a large courtyard in front and a row of blackened ovens in the rear. The yard was crowded with people unloading baggage, tethering their beasts or leading them through the low doorway that led to the stable beneath the inn. From the back came the smell of smoke and roasting meat where the cooks tended the spits. Joseph saw at once that the fears of these last torturous miles were to be realized. Trying to hide his consternation, he tied the donkey and hastened inside. The innkeeper was busy serving wine, a squat, wheezing man who had no time for Joseph's appeal. "I'm sorry, we're full up. Haven't an inch to lay a cat in, nor lay a mouse. You'll have to do as the others. Find yourself a friendly yard to sleep in, or go back outside and sleep in the fields, young man." "We can't. We've already paid dearly to enter this town. Can't we sleep on the earth this night? Maybe something below?" Joseph grabbed the man's beefy arm, causing him to slop wine down on his grimy apron. And though the man was angered, he could not escape the desperation in the young man's face. "My wife's in labor. She's about to bear a child. Don't you understand? You've got to give us shelter, at least for a few hours." "But I can't," the innkeeper said. He gestured to the people pounding their mugs for service. "Can't you see for yourself? There's simply no room. I'm sorry, lad, but I can't perform miracles." Miracles. Joseph thought in a flash of bitterness. Let the Lord produce a miracle now. Joseph talked to the man again. You must help us." "Well," he said, "there is a stable. It's full of creatures. There are people outside of it already. If you don't mind the stink and the noise." Joseph's heart sank. The chaos in the room was deafening, not only all around them, but from below, where he could hear beasts stamping and voices raised in drunken laughter and raucous argument. "Is there nothing else?" he begged. "My wife must have some privacy. We can't go below." But the innkeeper was gone already. As Joseph plunged back into the entrance, despairing, the man was suddenly wheezing at his side as he was getting ready to go out the door. "Wait," he said. "There are some caves toward the back where we store things and stable a few animals where we're crowded. It's quieter there and warm. You'll be alone there. Just circle the inn and go down the path. You can't miss it." Joseph thanked him, but he was heartsick as he hurried back to tell Mary. A stable? That God had chosen him to look after her, and the best he could provide was a poor cave, worse than that in which his parents had lived? A humble cave of a stable? But she was in the grip of such pain that there was no use wasting time apologizing. "Come, Mary," he said gently. "The inn is full, but you'll be alone, my beloved. I'll make you a soft bed on the hay." Once again, taking the donkey by the halter, he hurried it forward, flinching each time the poor beast stumbled and jarred her. Joseph prayed that the distance would not be far. The rocky pathway pitched downward as it circled the inn and led to the low but ample opening that marked the first of a series of caves. As he approached through the gathering darkness, he could see that even here they were not to have complete privacy, for a group of grizzled travelers had built a fire in front of the cave and were cooking their evening meal there. It lit up their faces, some old and weathered, some mere boys, and played on their veiled heads and their robes. They were laughing and talking as they squatted to dip their bread in the stew, or strode about, preparing to bed down for the night. They paid scant attention to the little group that plodded into the cave's yawning mouth. Inside, the mealy smell of oats, the tang of animals tethered in the semi-darkness, and the smell that Joseph would never forget. And so Joseph and Mary prepare for the birth of the Christ child. Tomorrow we'll find out what goes on during the labor period and how they get a little bit of help as we continue in Marjorie Holmes' Two from Galilee.